suddenly it's a flash mob where now the entire choir is singing. You just see the Starbucks worker bawling, tears of joy. It's a moment. I find that kindness is catching, is contagious.
It can be addicting, kindness. That rush of gratitude, love, surprise, wonder can create dopamine. Let's get addicted to that dopamine hit of kindness.
And I don't think that there is ever any consequence to being a witness to an act of kindness, as it then fills you up and propels you to continue the cascade of kindness.
That line in Hamilton, the musical, it's not just a moment, it's a movement. And kindness does not have to be rainbows and unicorns either. Sometimes kindness actually is difficult.
Our true intent of kindness, I hope that it's received by you. And if it's not, I'm open to understanding why not. That's where I think the true nugget of kindness lives.
And when we fill our cup with kindness towards ourselves, that's how we can overflow with intentional acts of kindness to others.
Drop the mic, it's a wrap. Welcome to Simply Enough. This is Zachary and Elizabeth, and thanks for tuning in.
If you're liking our podcast, we'd love it if you'd share with your friends and family.
And then rate and review to raise our visibility and spread the message of enoughness.
We love you, and remember, you are simply enough.
Just as you are.
Period.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Simply Enough. I'm Mr. Zachary Linnert.
And I'm Dr. Elizabeth Ignacio, and I'm so glad to be doing a new episode after our little break. And I have to tell you, though, that during our break, Zachary, I went to go visit my daughter up in college. Hooray! Yay. And it's always just such a special time. I do miss her so much, and it's so fun to, see her college, her city, through her eyes, but also to venture on my own a little bit. And I was walking in her town, and I happened to walk past a window, and there's a little sign in the window. And I actually took a picture of it because it really just kind of resonated with me. I just found it to be so charming to find just this little sign. It wasn't a store. It was, I don't know, maybe it was actually somebody's apartment. I might've been looking like a, peeper stalker or something. But there's this little sign, and I took a picture of it because I just loved it. And it said, if you have to choose between being kind and being right, choose being kind and you'll always be right. And I loved that because it made me think of, something that I've often told myself, as well as, my kids when they were young and as they were growing up. And we talked about it in, an episode last year about how it's not about being nice. Anybody can be nice. Being nice and being kind are quite different. Sometimes they merge, but sometimes they can actually be quite different. And kindness truly comes from a place of intent. It is a choice, and nice can be nice, but nice can also be fake and self-serving. So kindness is a different level. It's truly coming from a place of intent. And when I say place of intent, that indicates that there is, an element of choice, that one chooses to be kind, just like it said in that sign. And it makes me think of how, there's this wonderful movement, wonderful phrase going around in terms of random acts of kindness. And I take issue with that phrase, random acts of kindness, because I don't see kindness as being random at all. And I think we need to give credit where credit is due, that when one chooses to be kind, it is a choice, and therefore it is not random. It is a moment of intention, a very powerful moment of intention. I was in a McDonald's drive-through with my kids. Yes, I'm a doctor, and yes, I have McDonald's myself and for my kids. Everybody, don't
no
judge.
Shame. Come on,
no shame. And so we were in the drive-through, and I made my order, and I was wondering, like, boy, this drive-through is taking a long time. And I was almost about to get irritated, like, this person in front of me, what is taking so long?
Right.
Well, when I got to this is a drive-through where you order and pay in one window, and then you go further and you pick up the food at a second window. When I got to the window to pay, I put out my debit card, and the woman just looked at me. The cashier just looked at me, and again, because I was already waiting for a while, I was about to get irritated, like, why are you looking at me, lady?
Right.
Take my card. And then this cute little smile came on, and she said, the car ahead of you paid for you. And I was flabbergasted. Like, I've never been the recipient of that before. And it was such a very intentional act of kindness. And my kids were in the car, so they were witness to that intentional act of kindness. And I leaned out my window and yelled to the car ahead of me, who was already, about to leave, yelled, "Thank you so much." And it was such a moment of joy and gratitude. And I want to give credit that wasn't a random act of kindness. That was very intentional on his or her part, that driver's part. And it makes you think of this joke that I can't remember who the comedian was. I just happened to see it on Netflix, but it resonated with me because it brought me back to this memory of this drive-through occasion where I guess of recent, there's like some record that was broken that at a McDonald's, there were multiple people who kept this chain of paying for the person behind going. And so I don't know how many, dozens of it went through, but the comedian was like, and can you imagine the dude who broke that chain, that by the time that he got to the cashier and was told that his was paid for already, and the cashier's like, would you like to continue the tradition? Can you imagine the dude that says, no, I'm good, thanks.
Yes.
And that was an intention, that's a joke and all, but
Right.
that is an intentional choice to not perpetuate the kindness, just like it's an intentional choice to perform that act of kindness. So
Right.
I don't know. I just kind of wanted to put that out there, throw that out there, that rather than perpetuating this idea of random acts of kindness, that no, every act of kindness is a choice and every act of kindness is intentional. And let's celebrate that and let's honor that. And hopefully let's perpetuate that.
100% agree. And I also, much like joy is a topic that we both love discussing, kindness is that for me. And as you were sharing, I wrote down 4 stories already that connect with this because it's just one of those topics that just I fire right away once I hear the word kindness. And then to your point, absolutely. If at the core of kindness is true intentionality, it can never be random. It may feel random, right? Like I'm sure you were like, what? At the McDonald's counter, like somebody wanted to pay for me. It may felt that way, but it certainly wasn't random in the sense that the person that decided to do that act was just randomly deciding also, like that was truly intentional. So yes, I'm with you on this topic, and I'm happy we're here. I have a couple of things that I want to share if you don't mind. The first is the other day I was at the climbing gym. I just happened to notice, I looked up and there's a really tall wall, I don't know, 30, 40 feet up. And there was this little peanut of a climber that was up on the wall, probably was no more than 3 or 4 years old.
Oh.
Just adorable. You know what I mean? And like everything that's in adult size that comes down to like little size becomes like infinitely cuter. You know what I'm talking about? Like little
and more expensive.
and
Good
more-
marketing, everybody.
Right.
Okay, I'm just going to say that.
But there's this little child was climbing up the wall with the ropes, and I'm assuming the dad, but let's just say his grown up was there with the ropes, making sure that he was secure and everything. And he's just going up the wall, this little climber. But when he got down and he like high-fived his dad, and like there was just this celebration, he turned and his shirt said, "Be good to people."
Oh.
I just like immediately I thought of that little guy just already like putting out there, maybe his parents chose that for him, just believing this in the sense of like, a kindness, goodness towards other people is always intentional, right? It's always intentional. So here's my story. I too was traveling. It was a very large, like 787 where the seats were 3, 4, 3.
Oh yeah.
And there was just a very large coach section. Do they still call it coach? Economy section. And I was towards the back, and the plane wasn't sold out, but so I was on the window, and then the 2 seats next to me were open. In my same aisle looking down, so I was like seat A, there was the aisle on the other side was available, and there was a gentleman sitting in like the inside of the 4. Okay, so was like A, B, C, and let's say D, E. He was in say C, E. Okay, so this is what happened. I sit down, I kind of like put all my stuff away. I'm about to put my headphones on, and I just kind of catch out of the corner of my eye, a flight attendant comes over, and this gentleman is talking with the flight attendant. All of a sudden, he picks up his stuff and like is now sitting right next to me. Okay. Now I had been checking the seat map to see how full the flight was going to be, and there was going to be nobody sitting next to me. Okay. But now there's somebody sitting next to me, which is fine. Like I just always anticipate the flight's going to be full. The flight attendant ends up going further up the plane, then something happens. And now there's that whole row of 4 seats is now full, and what looks like a family. Okay. So what looks like a traditional mom and dad and 2 children. About 20 minutes after we take off. Oh, sorry. And let's assume that the mom of that family keeps saying to the flight attendant, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I was so worried. Thank you so much. Can you tell me, like, is there anybody I need to thank? Blah, 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 blah. And the cabin crew's like, no, this is just, we're glad that you guys are sitting together, et cetera. Okay. So fast forward about 20 minutes after takeoff, they're coming around with the cart, and the flight attendant offers the gentleman next to me a free drink. And he's like, no, absolutely not. No, thanks. And she's like, but I just, want to thank you for that. But he's like, that's not why I did it. So great, done, period. Okay. So now I'm curious, but I don't want to pry. And I said, I forget what I said, like, is everything okay or whatever? And he goes, as I was getting on, this mom was talking about how nervous she was that she and her family were going to be separated, and that they couldn't find a spot where all 4 could sit together. Now, he, as I learn, gets anxious on flights and prefers to be on the inside seat, which is mind-boggling to me, because like the last place I want to be is the center seat. So I'm like, okay, well, crazy, good for you, but he prefers to be more secure on the inside seat, right? So there's somebody in the window, there's somebody in the aisle. His row of 4 was the only one where all 4 could sit together, because everywhere else there was like 2 or 3 or whatever, except he had taken that spot intentionally so that he'd feel more secure. But he heard this mom so upset that she wasn't going to be with her children. This was like the first time their kids were flying. They were nervous. She was nervous. And so he asked, is there a spot, another middle seat available nearby that I can sit in so that this family can sit together? She's like, well, yeah, I mean, like 2 seats away from you, right next to this guy. So the long and the short of it is that family never knew that he had moved for them, because he didn't want them to know. He just wanted them to be together. So he told the flight attendant, please don't tell them. That's not the point. The point is that we have a very concerned mom, concerned family. And as they're flying 4.5 hours or whatever it was going to be, if there's something I can do to help them be together while still being safe myself, like, because he needed to be somewhere where he would feel secure. Can we make that happen? And I don't want them to know. So kind of like your story about paying it forward. You don't really know the people in this case who helped you. I mean, you screamed, thank you. But just a very overwhelming series of events and kind of a domino effect that still preserved this true intentionality to do right by another person and to help them in their need, while still also making sure that he was safe. Just totally like overwhelmed by it. And then also just his very nice and gentle way of saying, I don't need anything. I don't need a free drink. I don't need free food. All I need is the seat where I'm going to feel safe, and just the feeling of being able to have helped somebody. That was the prize. That was the award. That was not that you need prizes or awards. That's not what I mean, but that was enough. He didn't need anything else beyond that. And, then he was apologetic. He's like, I'm so sorry that you have to sit next to me, and you were going to have these spots available. And I said, well, now I get to participate in that. So like, you just gave me a gift, buddy. Like this is even more awesome, and I'm of course like super excited. And then I go back to watching my movie, but to just watch all of that happen. And for this family truly to now have peace of mind and peace of security for this flight, and for him to still have a place where he sat, and for all that to happen just so intentionally, was just beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful to watch. And that was immediately what came to me when you shared this topic, and then this idea of intentionality of kindness. And I had to share it with you today.
I love it. And my heart is literally like right now, I'm almost having chest pain, everybody, because like my heart just wants to leap out because it just gives me so much joy to hear stories like that. And also just the recognition of there are so many stories out there of kindness. Good is everywhere. You know, you and I, when we talk about episode ideas, we've talked about in the past this looming question that I know I was asked once, and I was like the sole person who raised my hand on the affirmative, which is the question of is the universe good? Is the universe good and helpful? And that's definitely what I believe, because I really do truly believe there's so much more good in the world than we know or acknowledge. It's just that our attention, whether it's our media or social media or whatnot, it's so much easier to highlight or focus on the negativity, but there truly is good all around and kindness all around. And I think actually, if we put a spotlight on that and recognize that and train our eyes and train our hearts to seek that out, look for that, and notice that really kindness and goodness is abundant in our world. On the flip side of social media, I will say that there are great ways to, depending on how you feed yourself. I like select my social media to very much like find good videos, and I like unfollow negativity. Well, one video that I saw was how it was a social experiment on kindness. In fact, I think that's what it was called. It was social experiment on kindness. And the person holding the video was kind of like whatever, a secret camera or whatever. And you could tell it was a secret camera because it was like poorly edited if we're gonna gauge and judge the quality of the editing. But he went up to a fast food cashier, and you can hear his voice, and he says, you know, ma'am, I got here to the front and I realized I forgot my wallet, but I'm really hungry. So can you just give me a piece of bread? Can I just have a piece of bread? But I forgot my wallet. And the woman says, oh, well, are you hungry? Well, what do you want? I'm not going to get you bread. You want a sandwich and stuff? And he's like, yeah, but I can't pay for it. So if you can just give me bread. And she's like, no, I'll pay for it. I'll pay for it. You're hungry. And he was like, are you kidding? I'm just asking for a piece of bread because I cannot even pay for the bread. And she's like, I'm not going to let you go hungry. What do you want? Do you want, fries, a burger, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, well, I can't pay you. She's like, I know, I heard you, but I'll pay for it. And he's like, I'm sorry, but why are you doing this? And she said, you're hungry. I'm not going to let you go hungry. My mama taught me, and this is a woman clearly like she's in her, middle age at this point, but she's like, my mama always taught me that, now I'm paraphrasing, but along the lines of, we are all the same. We are more similar than we are different. And so we're here for each other more than we are to separate each other. So here, and she gets him an entire meal, hands it to him. And he said, oh, you know what? I was wrong. I actually have my wallet. Here it is. And I actually have $1,000 and I want to give this to you. I want to pay for it. And she's like, what? And he's like, yeah, this $1,000 is for you. So thank you for buying thank you for paying for my meal. I would like to pay you back with this $1,000. And then she starts crying and she freaks out. And not that one does kindness for a reward, right, but it just shows, number one, that there is kindness out there. And number two, a lot of times kindness is repaid abundantly. Maybe not at that moment, maybe not by that person, but they say that karma is what you give out with your return address. So whatever you mail out, it's your return address that comes back to you. So maybe not in that very moment might you get repaid per se, but kindness is there. Goodness is in people. I think that is our natural proclivity, our natural inclination to be good and to be kind. It's just that our focus might be, towards the sensationalized negativity, but really there is so much good and so much kindness out there if we look for it.
Absolutely. And to build off of that, I also saw one where this gentleman was going through this drive-through at Starbucks, and it turns out that he's actually a member of a choir, and he starts singing to the Starbucks employee. And then suddenly it's a flash mob where now the entire choir is singing, and you just see the Starbucks worker just bawling, like tears of joy coming down his face, and the other workers there. Now it's a moment, right? And what was somewhat disheartening in one way, but then also uplifting in the other way, was I started to read some of the comments, and some of the comments said things like, "Oh, look, they're just doing this so that they can get hits on their video or likes on the video, and maybe there's something self-serving in it." And I don't know. I choose to see it a different way. And why I find it uplifting is because there were many comments that supported my reframing of this moment, which was, I find that kindness is catching. Kindness is contagious. Whether or not the intention of the recording of it was self-serving, I don't care, actually. There was a moment of kindness that the recipient got. And who knows to say the domino effect of that moment, as anybody else that came to Instagram and watched it then thought, okay, what act of kindness, like, was I the recipient of, or what act of kindness can I put out there today? And I don't think that there is ever any consequence to being a witness to an act of kindness, as it then fills you up and then like propels you maybe to continue the domino effect or the cascade of kindness. So anyway, so I just want to add that too. Like, I just think kindness is catching. And I also think that the more we see it and the more we're open to it, the more we ourselves want to then participate in it.
I can't help but think, as you're saying this, that line in Hamilton, the musical, this isn't a moment, it's a movement.
Yes.
And that's exactly what happens is that, you can be witness to a moment, you can be the recipient within the moment. And who knows that can then become intentional in a movement, and it's like a dopamine hit. Like, literally, it can be addicting, kindness. So that rush of gratitude, that rush of love, that rush of surprise, that rush of wonder can create dopamine in your brain that goes throughout your body. Let's get addicted to that dopamine hit of kindness. It's not just a moment, it's a movement. And certainly in that moment and any future moments, those are intentional. Those are choices. And so they're not random at all.
Not at all. And also, in the scale of things, their kindness can look a million different ways and can take a million different shapes. And a true and intentional act of kindness doesn't have to be, I'm going to pay for, the hundreds of dollars of food behind me. It can literally be somebody drops something and you pick it up and return it to them. Like there really is no measure of kindness to say, like, it has to be above this threshold. It truly has to come just from a place of intention and intentionality.
And kindness does not have to be rainbows and unicorns either. Sometimes kindness actually is difficult. And sometimes the greatest sacrifice of kindness is when kindness hurts. Sometimes one of the kindest things to do is to not enable and perpetuate harmful behavior or harmful habits. That hurts. Sometimes the kind thing to do is having to turn away. And in turning away, that hurts one's heart. But if that is the kind thing to do, honor and recognize the kindness in that, when it might be easier to be nice and perpetuate bullying, for example, right? Like I can't help but think of, our youth and bullying that can occur. And sometimes the easy thing to do is put on a aloha face and appear nice, but then backstab and be a part of and be privy to backstabbing of somebody else, as opposed to the kind thing is actually to stand one's ground, stand up for the person being bullied, and risk being ostracized by, the bullying Mean Girls group or whatever. Sometimes the kind thing doesn't appear to be the nice thing. It all depends on what the intent is.
When I was in high school, I was considering whether or not I wanted to go to college for performing arts. And I was really in a difficult place of believing that I needed to choose a more practical path versus what I internally really was interested in pursuing, which was performing arts. And also being a family that from a family of limited resources, I didn't know if college was necessarily like we were able to pay for it or afford it. So I felt even more pressure to choose, like a quote unquote more legitimate degree. Okay. So like that was kind of the stage, but I had a very influential mentor who was our theater director, and she was just a very dear friend of mine. And, as much as a high school student can have kind of a friendship relationship with a teacher, we were clearly on our path, on our way to becoming two individuals who would stay in touch into adulthood and see the evolution of their relationship change and become more equals than like teacher student. However, where I'm going with this is we had a very difficult conversation where she sat me down and was trying to help me figure out what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go. And she gave me some really hard information about what the life of a performer would look like. And she wasn't doing that to sway me to choose something more practical. In fact, actually, it was kind of the opposite. She was just trying to put the landscape out there. But fast forward to my wedding, she was actually at my wedding, and I brought this up with her. I said, just, do you remember that moment? She goes, oh, I absolutely remember that moment. I felt it was my job as your mentor, as your teacher, as your friend, to give you the truth and to give you everything that I could to lay out what could be possible for you, but also not to sugarcoat it so much that you are then bought in and thought, okay, that's going to happen to me. She goes, I felt that was the kind thing for you. But it wasn't but it wasn't the nice thing. She goes, it wasn't nice for me either. It wasn't nice for me to sit in that place of kind of like deflating your dreams a little bit, but I felt I had to do it. And so I was the recipient of a kind act that didn't feel good, that certainly didn't feel nice, but absolutely was where this person leaned into true intentionality in a place of kindness for my betterment and also for hers too. So yes, absolutely. To just
possibly at risk to her,
at risk. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Really teasing out even more. So the difference between kindness and being nice is that kindness doesn't always have that kind of like up joy, dopamine hit in that kind of way. It definitely has an inverse too, but the intentionality, the purpose, everything is still the same. It just looks different.
Our last episode, we talked about superpowers and how everybody, has their own individual, unique superpowers. I think one thing that we all can celebrate and tap into ourselves is each of our superpower of kindness. I think we all have that. I think we ought to celebrate that within ourselves, because when we celebrate that capacity that we have for kindness within ourselves, that's how we bring it out. Mm-hmm. Is recognizing that not only are we capable of kindness, but our capacity, even, I bet you, supersedes our capability. So let's tap into that capacity of kindness. Recognize that it is a intentional choice, and that back to that sign that I saw in the window, it's not always what might appear right, but choose kindness over being right. Choose being kind over being right. And that means even, let's say you're in an argument or you're in a debate or somebody is judging you wrongly. Mm-hmm. We can sit in the decision of what is the kind thing to do and let that person, have a wrong assumption and walk away, or stay in the fight so that we can be right. But then at whose expense is that being right?
I love where you're going with this. And whether or not we think that opening a door for somebody is considered an act of kindness, let's just suspend and assume that we're there. I did that one time. I held a door open for somebody, and the response that came back to me is, I don't need you to hold the door for me. Right? Okay, fine. And what I think to build, and in kind of a small example, to build off of what you're saying is, sometimes the intention behind the kindness isn't necessarily what is received. And if coming back to myself and thinking what my intention was truly in an attempt to be considerate of somebody else, I am not rattled necessarily if that kindness is not received in the way that I intended it. Much like my theater director knew that her intention was really for my betterment and for hers, right? Eve added risk to herself, like you said, but it still didn't. Maybe it did rattle her, but she still held true to that intentionality, and she still held clear to that moment of her superpower, her kindness superpower, and almost suspended any interpretation of the act because she was so crystal clear about what she was doing. So I throw that out there, just if that at all relates to what you were saying, and the potential impression or interpretation of what happens, as almost not necessarily, I don't want to say relevant, but doesn't necessarily cloud the intentionality behind why you wanted to do it in the first place. Does that make sense?
It does. And I'm just going to add a little tangent though, because being a diminutive 5'1" Filipina in a male dominated profession, I will also say a little tangent, which is sometimes even with good intentionality, it actually is coming from a place, subconscious and again, unintended, but the intentional kindness still actually is subverted by actually patronizing.
Oh yeah.
And so for an act to be intentional, if it's not received well, so let's say somebody is being kind to me and I perceive it and take offense to it because the way I received it is that it was patronizing. I want to throw out there the possibility that though the intention was kind, to be truly mindful, it's also fair to also look at the recipient and mindfully recognize how and why the recipient is taking it that way. And if that resonates and wants you to reconsider perhaps, other ways of demonstrating kindness, great. But if also in that same mindfulness, you recognize, no, that person just received it poorly. And I get, part of that person's point of holding the door open for them. So, okay, I'll give them that, but still I'm going to sit in my kindness of my intent, because though it might be received as patronizing as opposed to chivalrous, I can feel kind in acknowledging that that's how it was received, but still also sit in my kindness and own that my intention was purely kind.
Yes.
I know that's convoluted,
no,
but I'm just trying to give credence to all sides of how a particular intentional moment can be perceived.
You're absolutely right, Dr. Ignacio. And it makes me think about a show that you and I both enjoy on Netflix that really dives into high school teenager life and the angst of teenager life and what happens at this pivotal time in your maturity and
coming of age, self-discovery,
yes,
the balance of relationship between parent and child, teacher and student.
It's such a great show, and it really it's
funny as all hell, and yet so
hysterical,
powerful and poignant and quite authentic. Sorry, go ahead.
No, absolutely. With just really deep characters and deep storylines that you can get into, and characters that are flawed and very human and very lovable, but also make mistakes. I mean, this is just a show, I think, that provides a lot of entry points for all of us that went through our, teenage years, but also no teenagers, and know okay, yeah, that's what they do, or this is what they experience, this is what they go through, this is how hard it is. And I think it's such a rich show that, the title sometimes I think can be distracting to how deep and complex and how much of an iceberg it is, right? Because it's called sex education, but really, if you look below the surface, it's got so many great life themes and maturing themes and anything. So it's just
funny as all hell.
Oh my
Sorry,
God, it's so
I have
funny.
to just keep saying it.
But anyway, okay. So there's one quick storyline that I think demonstrates what you're talking about, and that is the character of Amy decides that she wants to pay for her friend Maeve to go on this trip that all of the grade is going on. But Amy pays for it, quote unquote, anonymously, because Maeve, if very poor family, her mom is kind of in and out of the picture and dealing with a various addiction and substance issues and whatnot. So Amy truly trying to do something good and pay for Maeve's trip. Maeve is not happy about that. She's not happy that it's one, anonymous at first, and then she finds out it's her dear friend Amy, and it causes this rift between them. Now, I love the character of Amy. I got to say, she is just a hoot. Like, absolutely love her. I love the character of Maeve, but I just love Amy and how they come back to each other and resolve, well, this is what I intended and this is how it felt. And they learn to come together, right? Yes. Is exactly where I think now kindness builds upon itself, where you can, okay, I see what your intention was. That's not how I received it. Okay, I see how you received it. That's not how I intended it. Now, what do we do going forward? And now we've connected not only with ourselves, but with each other. And I think that's really where now we demonstrate our true intent of kindness. Is it's not just, I'm going to do what I think is right by you. I also hope that it's received by you. And if it's not, I'm open to understanding why not. That's where I think like the true nugget of kindness lives. I think we all have moments like that. The reason why I brought this up was only because, to your point about sometimes kindness involves making a choice to not engage with somebody or to walk away from a situation or to stand up to a bully, that if we think about previous episodes where we are standing in place and just that moment of like grounding ourselves, we are firm, and we, maybe we can take some flaps or something, but for the most part, we stay in that place. Why I went in that direction was only because I think if you're clear about what your intentionality is, it helps you withstand maybe the bully who pushes back at you or the friend that now is trying to engage with you more. But I think it also helps in those moments when somebody says, I didn't like that. I didn't receive that well, that you can also say, okay, tell me more. I want to listen. Yes. I want to understand.
Because kindness comes, when we talk about intent and where it comes from, kindness comes from a place of compassion. Mm-hmm. And from connection. Even these so-called random acts of kindness where they're not random, as we say, they're intentional. But like, let's say, putting money in a person's parking meter, and then you walk away. So you never see that person, and that person doesn't know that you just did that. But I'm telling you, that moment is a moment of connection because you are feeling and anticipating what that person might be, what that person's reaction might be when that person arrives at his or her parking meter and sees that it's been paid for. That's still even a moment of connection, even if it's anonymous. Mm-hmm. So it comes from a place of connection and compassion, not pity.
Yes.
And, we often do this. So I'm going to do it again. Why not? So as much as we're talking about compassion and connection with each other, and that's what kindness is, remember, ultimately, in filling one's cup, where we tend to have the hardest time, surprisingly, is having and directing kindness towards oneself. So whatever kindness you might naturally extend to your friend, how you speak to your friend, how you support your friend, how you're kind to a stranger, remember to direct that same kindness, that same compassion, that same connection with your inner self. And that's how we can feel not only simply enough, but more than enough. And when we fill our cup and we fill our heart and we fill our soul with kindness towards ourselves, that's how we can overflow with intentional acts of kindness to others.
Done. Drop the mic. It's a wrap. Spot on.
So just remember.
Go back, listeners, and listen to that again. And I'm saying that really not to all of you, but to myself, because you are 100,000,000,000% correct. And that was the button that I needed to hear, because I know I truly seek out opportunities to be kind to other people. And I fail being equally as kind, if not more so, to myself. And that was the reminder that I absolutely needed today. So thank you, Dr. Ignacio, for that.
Yay.
Okay, sorry. Now we can wrap it up.
Okay.
And remember, you are not just simply enough.
You are more than enough, just as you are.
You are.
Period.
Period. Love you.
Love you. Mwah.